Hey guys, welcome back to INSITE and welcome back to the PGL CS2 Major in Copenhagen. We're back here with another interview and something that is a little bit different. We don't have like a player or a talent. I have someone that maybe I can't expect you to get many interviews, but I am here. Well, you normally on the other end of it. I am here with the editor-in-chief of Dust2 US, formerly Rush-B Media, and firstly, I just want to ask, how are you doing? How's everything been? I know you've been a little bit sick, so like, you feeling better now?
Yeah, it's funny. I've done these majors a few times, I've done events a few times, and I always come back like a little bit sick. And this time I got sick before. I think it was because like we had Sunday to Sunday, and I was like burnt out. So I think I just caught a little whatever. But yeah, mostly back, mostly ready. This means I won't be sick when I go home. So
positives,
right?
Positives, yeah. And yeah, this major has been a really interesting one from a America's perspective because firstly, you just only had one North American team in here, and it was mostly South American teams. So just talk to me about when you came into this event. How was it maybe different planning and prepping and having that mentality that you're going and covering South American CS and not North American CS?
So yeah, I mean it's an interesting one, right? Because we have Dust2 Brazil, which is our sister site, and they cover Brazil. So they have grown at an exponential level down in Brazil. Like they've become massively popular. It's been fucking awesome to see that, and we're super proud of them. So for the English-speaking coverage, how do I do that for the Brazilian teams? And that was really hard to figure out. I leaned into it with this like Raul Amigo like persona and just like joking about, hi, I'm Portuguese, hi, I'm Brazil's best friend, because I had that relationship that I built up so many years of like joking with Brazilians and doing that. So our coverage idea was that like, at first it was, hey, like let's try to cover Brazil. But as I realized, the other interesting whole storyline was how many spots can they give the Americas?
Yes.
And I think that's something that I have focused on just as a journalist, just as like someone that's been really interested in the dynamic of how these majors are structured, is the spots. And I feel that I've always been, I know that a lot of people do it, and I hate being egotistical, but I feel that I am constantly one of the people that is bringing it up, that's addressing it, that's making and like writing these articles, be like, hey, this is what happens if this team wins, if this team doesn't, how does this affect if it goes through? What are the legend spots like? And we really leaned into that. And we wrote article after article about like, this is how Brazilian teams do at 2-1. If they qualify, that means that we get this many spots. And none of it was guaranteed, but that was a good way for us to still get a lot of attention for our day-to-day articles. Because when we go to these events, sometimes it's hard when we don't have NA teams.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and this might be a bit of an obvious answer or question, but you were saying that you've always leaned into something like that in the sports.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important that like we should understand why there are more spots, and why is it important now that America has all these different spots?
So it's important that we understand these majors because like Valve is giving us a really, really cool tournament. And it's complicated. It's not easy to always understand the rules, right? People didn't understand that the seeding for the initial matchups was actually predetermined by last year's placement in the regions. So the reason that the Americas was playing each other wasn't because of any predetermined seeding of every team that came in. It was predetermined seeding based off of the region. So because the Americas had teams that finished last, they were the last team to go in there if you were the bottom ranked team from there. Now, because you had European teams finishing 0-3, that means that the lowest ranked European team in the opening stage of the Shanghai Major will be seeded 16th. So in essence, we already know that there will be like a Europe v Europe matchup here because of the way that the new seeding is. And it's complicated, it's different. Not everyone's going to know it. Not everyone's like super nerding out about it. But I think it's interesting for us to understand it because there's so much controversy that happens every time that we come to a major. And it's like we all black out and forget what happened last time.
It's a blur.
It's
just,
You don't remember the rules of what happened last time. You don't remember everything. This was the first time that we did the 1v8 and then the 9v16 seeding. And it's produced arguably better results for the playoff. But does that mean that we're going to have better results going forward? We don't know, right? Conventional thinking and the book hold system and all of that, it's super complicated, but it's important for us to understand what are the parameters, how is the major going on, how should we interact with it? And then to your part about the Americas, it's super important for the Americas to get more spots, and it's even better that Asia gets more spots. Like, Europe is so dominating into the major. They had 17 spots for this major. That's insane. They had an LCQ. It's too much.
Yeah.
And for the Americas to kind of fight back, it's able to create a way in which there's more equitable distribution and more financial investment. FlyQuest just picked up Greyhound.
Yes.
They're going to go ahead and say, oh, we're totally not doing it for the major spot. But like, now that there's 40 spots, they can totally do it and like go in, right? And now with the Americas, Legacy is moving from South America to North America. They're going to get better. North America is going to get better practice. There's other organizations that I know of that are constantly prodding around and saying, okay, what teams can I look to invest in this summer that have a genuine shot at making a run in the RMR? Wildcard, for example, didn't make it. They had a really rough time, but they're going to be close to getting ready to make it for the next time.
Yeah.
And now there's 2 more spots. And going back to the whole rules thing, everyone was really upset in the Americas RMR because the bookhold system was incorrect. Because the seeding had the 1 seed played the 2 seed because not all of the matches played out. All of the 1-2 matches and all of the 0-2 matches, they couldn't go to 3s. So because of that, it affected the way that the seeding was going into the qualification matches and going later on in the 3-1s.
Yeah.
Or the 2-1s.
Okay.
Right? There's no 1-2s. It's 1-1s and 2-1s. Those were it. So you had no 1-2 matches to be played. You had no 0-2 matches to be played. Because of that, it affected the seeding and it affected how certain teams played one another. But now, because of the 7 seeds, you have to play out the full thing, which will lead to better results, hopefully, for all those teams.
Yeah.
So it's a super nerdy answer, but like the rules fascinate me of how we're getting to deciding these teams to come through, and I just don't think that people pay a lot of attention to it. They're just like, what's the results? How is it different this year?
Yeah.
So it's something that I've tried to focus on, and something that I think is important for us to understand if we want better systems.
Yeah. I mean, like, I will say it's so cooked that teams lose 2, like a best of 1 and a best of 3. It's like, well, major over.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, I guess whatever.
Yeah,
that is definitely something that's a little bit. But speaking about us major and staying on the theme of South American Counter-Strike, wow, they genuinely played good Counter-Strike this tournament. And I think for me, it was one of the first times I've seen South America be put on the map at a tier 1 stage for a very long time. Was this something that you were even anticipating even happening?
I wasn't, and the reason I wasn't was because I looked at Furia's form in Europe, which was terrible.
Oh, like, and I genuinely
awful.
Yeah.
But they came back, played the IEM Dallas qualifier, and dumped the shit out of everyone in South America. Like, Imperial were super, super consistent, constantly winning tournaments, and then they went up against Furia and got dumpstered. And it was like, that's not a good sign. Like, if the team that's getting the shit kicked out of them in Europe is coming back and beating the teams that we think are going to be really strong. Yeah. What seemed to happen better was that it was just a LAN environment, or they got lucky with seedings, or they won on best of 1s. Like, Imperial beat Virtus Pro on LAN on Inferno. Like,
which is not an easy thing
Which
to
is
do.
not an easy thing to do, but Imperial literally, we were saying before, they had practiced by watching Jame demos. They had practiced by specifically looking at Virtus Pro. They changed up their entire playstyle. They modeled themselves after this European team by doing slow aggression T sides and planning within the last 15 seconds. Like, they really have reinvented a way that they were trying to be competitive, which was really, really strong for them. The American teams obviously were disappointing. Like, just a lot of them were first timers. A lot of them were like real first-time teams at an event like this that didn't have the necessary experience together to be able to compete at that high level. Whereas these South American teams, they just had it. They had that dog in them. Honestly, they had that dog in them a lot better than I think a lot of the North American teams do. And I think it's something that my region can and should do a lot better. I think we're getting there. I think we're slowly developing a way on how to do it. I think teams like M80 are there. I think they didn't have an IGL. They had Def, who went for 3 years in Valorant, and they almost made it.
I was thinking, I was like, how is this happening?
Right.
Like, how is it
a
actually,
round away? And so, I think the North American teams are close. I think the South American teams were doubted really heavily. I didn't even think that they were going to be strong here. I thought it was going to be some 0-3s, but they showed up. They showed that they can really hang.
Yeah.
And hopefully now with more direct qualifiers for South America, hopefully those don't just go to Furia. Like, hopefully they can go to Pain. Hopefully they can go to Imperial. Legacy's moving to North America specifically because they want to take care of practice and they want to take care of, like, more qualification spots, which I think is, like, it's good. We had that earlier on, and they're trying to continue to get better. And as they do it, they improve our region. So it's a
when people come in, everyone benefits.
Yeah. Especially North American teams because of these South American teams. They come in with a drive, they come in with a passion, they come in and they're like, we're going to practice well, and you need to get up to our standard.
Yeah.
Even if you're better than us skill-wise, we're going to out-practice you. And I think that's something that North Americans do. I think North Americans are better skilled than South Americans as a entire region.
Generalization.
I think South American teams practice better. I think that they're more team focused. I think that they are better prepared for a match day than any North American team, like talking tier 2, like the 1.5, not like Liquid and stuff. And
it's different.
But like that's what I mean. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. And I hope that, like, listen, if Brazil is going to continue to win and give us spots, like, I don't give a fuck. Like, it's great. It's awesome.
That's phenomenal. And so you mentioned that you singled out Imperial and you went, look, they've reinvented themselves, and I think you were trying to tie, and like you were tying it because of the practice they do and stuff like that. What do you think is do you think the issue with the North American teams that they're not reinventing themselves and it's because of the practice, or are you putting it a little bit on their lack of experience, which you already mentioned as well?
I think there's a lot of factors that play into why North America is always a little bit behind. We say it a lot, but I don't think people understand. Like, Valorant took our leaders and like the veterans away from the game. It took some of the young upcomers, like Tens and Psalm, were like really good, and they're now the world's best in Valorant. Zelsis, who came in and then was a stand-in for Cloud9, he aced in his like first round ever at a major. He now just won Masters at Madrid. Like, there's a lot of Counter-Strike players from North America. They're also like some of the best in the world in Valorant, and it's not because like Valorant's a worse game or there's less competition. Like, they're good FPS players. They know what to do. I think the problem was they got squeezed out. I just don't think that there was enough spaces for them. Like, the top pros that were there and are there, that remain there, have been there for so many years. Yeah. But also older pros like FNS. Like, he was an IGL that really captained everything, and he kind of left, and there's no one to really bring up more IGLs. So I think that plays a huge part in it. Another factor is, like, NA is very stat heavy. It's very focused on, like, hey, if you're performing well at this, I'm going to pick you up for my advanced team.
I've heard that.
And they don't focus on roles. And I think it's because people just don't understand roles. I think that they don't have the education to say, hey, give me this guy that can be a glue guy. Give me this guy that can be like a really good support. Like, I can't just look at what his HLTV rating was at this event. And you're seeing it more with the LANs that are coming back. Players are going, oh, I went to this LAN. I saw this guy. I saw how well he could play there. We meshed, and now he joined my team, and now we're having a really successful time because I met him at this LAN and was able to see him in person. So we're seeing that help and get better, which is really good. And finally, I think it's quality of practice. I think that there's still a lot of egos. Teams aren't taking practice as seriously. I think one of the worst things that teams do in North America, I think it's an esports problem overall. I hate scrims. I think scrims are stupid.
Riddle me that.
I think scrims are stupid because what are you practicing in the scrim? Are you scrimming just to say, oh, I want to beat up on them, or I'm going to like scrim them because like it's a practice match? Is that what you're doing, or is there a specific tactic that you're trying to play and you're going to run it 5 separate times? Are you having full buy monies every single round so you can focus on your gun rounds and do that? I think that there are people that don't use the potential for scrims to be what they should be.
That I agree. Yeah, there's actually I don't know if you might not or might not know this. Virtus Pro, they have a plugin on their practice server that skips ecos. So which is great. Yeah. And I was talking to a UK team that was coming up, and they were like, I was like, so are you practicing good team down there? Like, yeah, fucking practicing Virtus Pro, and we took this thing from them. They play an eco, killing console, or like it literally just skips the round and just goes to the next round, and like they just don't care. Like, who cares about practicing eco? But no, that's really interesting. Yeah.
But also, if you have the money, you can still practice an eco round. Yeah. You can literally just go, okay, I know that we have the money, but we need to figure out what a good force buy tactic would be up against.
Because it happens in a game. You need to learn how to do it. Yeah.
So that's what people, I think, need to be doing more of, is figuring out how can we practice for specific scenarios, whereas I think that a lot of times, unfortunately, teams are just saying, we're practicing and we're going to play it like it's a match and figure out what it's like as a match, instead of, really focusing on those nitty-gritties as a squad.
Yeah. It's like, I agree with that. It was just when you said you don't like scrims, I was like, what do you mean by that?
I don't like them, I think, in their current form.
I think I know what you mean, but I do actually get what you mean, and I'd say I probably do agree. Yeah. I think it's very obvious when people are like, we win in scrims, but not in officials. Like, yeah, because...
Right.
So,
because the other team might purposely be doing something that they're fucking up constantly against you. And they can walk away from a 2-hour session with you and think, wow.
Great practice.
Right. We won
2 rounds.
Right. We won 2 rounds out of 10 on a specific strat that we we're not comfortable with, on a map that we might not be comfortable with, figuring something out.
Yeah.
And so, I think a lot of my distaste is people saying, oh, we're crushing in scrims. What are you crushing? What exactly are you doing in scrims that you are coming away and saying?
Main level teams. They're like, we're beating these guys.
Right. And it's like, that's, so I get annoyed when I'm told that, there's this new crazy team that's coming up that's crushing everyone in scrims. I'm like, great, but okay.
Yeah.
Scrims not win.
Do it in officials, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So. Okay, that makes sense. And so moving on with the major, moving to the elimination stage.
Yeah.
What a name. When complexity came, so I don't want to talk about much about the CS here. I want to actually talk about you guys covering. And this was something that I think you did really interesting. And we'll get on to a further topic about that in a second. But you were proper press. You were coming out the van. And I know that was a little bit mean, but the incentive behind it was, let's try to do something different.
Yeah.
Let's try reinvent ourselves, like Imperial. So talk to me about your coverage of, you can only talk to one team, for instance. How are you trying to make that different and dynamic and just a little bit more oomph?
So I think it's something I've always been interested in from the esports journalist side, because I think that we, as esports journalists, I think this is going to piss a lot of people off when I say this. We take ourselves very seriously.
Oh, for
when
sure.
We should not be. We should not be taking ourselves seriously at all, because we are not. We can't try to be coverage sites like everyone else does. We need to be coverage sites that are different, that are new, that are exciting. I don't agree with a lot of things that Barstool has done, but their model of engaging and going after youth in creative and different ways of their different types of content offerings is what is the new way forward when you come to these events, right? I posted the video about the that TMZ style video that we did. Complexity players had no idea that was happening.
You could tell they were like, what's going on?
Right, they had no idea that it was happening. It was all supposed to be something random off the cuff, and it was supposed to just be this is going to be something creative and different, and they could react in a million different ways. I have to be confident to roll with the punches. Whatever's going to happen, it's not going to be funny if I stress about it. And if it sucks, if it really sucked, we scrap it and I think of something different. But that was the way that I needed to set a tone of I have to be different. I can't just go and do interviews like everyone else. Dust 2 can't be a site that is like everyone else. We're an English-speaking site going up against a ton of other English-speaking sites across the entire ecospace. But what's going to make people want to come and watch North American Counter-Strike when everyone is North American Counter-Strike sucks? And it's going after personalities, figuring out the Complexity Squad are full of funny kids.
Yeah.
And so use that to your benefit when you can. There was other content that we shot throughout their time that they were here. I didn't end up using any of it. None of it just really fit with what I wanted.
What stuff was it?
So it was stuff we basically pregame stuff, following them, going straight from the practice room with Jason Lake and doing some behind the scenes stuff like that, straight into the elevator, walking out into it. There was stuff that I wanted to do that was going to follow some of the players, basically okay, what does a setup day look like? And I couldn't get them on the setup day when they were setting up the SSDs to figure out this, because I was covering another match.
People
would love to figure out what do you do when you go to a major?
Yeah.
And that's how we need to deliver content for our site and for our community, because no one else is doing it. No one else is trying to figure out how to. It's a very conventional. Do an interview, you put the interview as the quote for the headline, and you move on and figure it out. Right? it's boring. It's done. It's rehashed. And I'm not saying that we didn't do that this time, but this major was, I think, the first major where I looked at it and said, I have to start changing the cycle. And I really looked at everything and it was like, we've got to do this differently.
Yeah.
We have to figure out differently. So I'm looking at a bunch of other journalists in the footballing space, soccer, but looking at a lot of different, like, how podcast media companies have done things. For those that follow baseball, John Boy Media is another Barstool type outlet. They've done a lot of creative work that covers professional sports. So it's figuring out what does the new audience want that keeps them engaged, while also honoring our core promise of, like, we're here to do real journalistic work of, like, following your favorite players and providing those interviews. But how do we make sure that, like, we're doing it in the best way that gets the most eyes on it to deliver the best product possible?
Yeah, doing the maybe like TMZ stuff to get the Barstool stuff to get the eyes on the real content.
Right.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely the difference between what's going to be good for social media, what's going to be good for advertising constantly that we are here, that we are doing this stuff, and then what's going on the website that is, hey, this is like the product. Like, you're going to now see something here that is the full interview, and if you want it, you got it. We've started churning out interviews a little bit faster. We'll do 4, 5, 6 minute interviews, and what we've decided to do is take 3 questions, 3 answers that we find were the best, put them into the article, and tell everyone else, go to the YouTube video. It gets our articles out much faster, keeps people further engaged with the topic because the match has just happened, and then we're putting it onto our secondary content channel where we can also have longer form stuff and do additional stuff like, oh, hey, there's a podcast that they've done. Oh, I can go see that, or oh, I can see this thing that they've done. You know, it's that kind of stuff. So it's figuring out how to maximize everything that we're doing constantly. And with complexity, I mean, the organization are tremendous. We've been working very close with them for the last 2 years, really since I joined. And they were like, anything you need.
Yeah.
And that I think is better than anything else. Is that I will say that the organizations in North America have always looked at us as the HLTV.
What does that mean?
It means that they will seek us out first. They will say, you are the top tier. You are the absolute ones. We are going to go talk to you. We are going to go do these interviews. Anything you say jump, we'll say how high. Like, that is how that they've treated us. And in return, like, we are going to ensure that, like, you know, if they're going to look at us and be like, hey, can you ask this question? It's going to be like, okay, I got to make sure that, like, the question is something that's worthy, but, like, all right, let's hear the answer that you want to do. Yeah. But it works both ways. They give us, they're trying to give us information in the light that they want that information. It's our job to make sure that, like, the information does get out, but we have to ensure that what they're telling us is also, like, you know, we're not just a PR piece, right? And that's sometimes a delicate balance to figure out when, you know, these teams are your entire lifeline.
It is really interesting when, like, you look at it as, like, teams do badly, you do badly, and, like, I know it sounds pretty weird, but I was just like,
unfortunately,
I was just like, you guys are almost like the caddies of esports, where it's like you're kind of relying on the people that you're playing with.
That's such a good,
I've been watching golf. I've been following your footsteps. Okay, so complexity actually.
Yeah.
Jason Lake, he's back. He was really cool to watch. At this major. What's it like having a complexity with a Jason Lake back in the scene?
He was gone for the bit with Game Square because he just had so much other shit to do.
He's a very busy man.
He's an exceptionally busy guy. I think with Jason Lake back in the driver's seat, I think the team feels better. They also can know that they are the number one priority content, and like just the number one priority, not necessarily content, because Jason Lake loves Counter-Strike, and he's going to keep that team American. That's their ethos. That's their branding. He wants to keep that regardless. So that's always an interesting thing. Is like you have an owner that is now making sure that his ethos is really instilled onto these teams. I mean, he came out, which was great. I don't think he's come out in a very long time.
I haven't seen him in a while.
Right. So for him to come out, it was great. There were plans for him to stay longer. He was supposed to stay through this entire week if Complexity were able to just get that one win. But he's an owner that really cares. He really does care. And I think that he's going to be a lot more invested now because now it's his baby. Now there's a lot more on the line for him. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. I think he's also grown a lot now, having been a part of the corporate sphere with GameSquare. He's probably definitely learned a lot more things about how to necessarily run this team, budgetary issues, all those kinds of things. But also now he gets to go back to that bootstrapping mentality. And that's where he really pulled through in a lot of weird and crazy ways, was that bootstrapping mentality. So it's a lot of, there's a fire that's going to be there. And I think he has a wealth of knowledge that he is going to be a much better owner, I think, now than he ever was before. And that's not to say that he was a bad owner before. But what I'm trying to say is that he has gone through so much, and now he'll be able to really take Complexity for what he has. And I think he's going to do a really good job with it. I'm excited for it. Everything that I've talked to with Complexity as the organization has been, there's no problems. There's no liquidity issues. There's no concerns about how the team is going to be going forward. And they're all excited for Lake to be pushing this forward.
Yeah, and you can tell. I remember, I think I showed you the "Bring me them pistols" clip.
Oh yeah.
He since 2003, he's never lost a fire, never lost a passion.
It was so funny in the stage. We were sitting outside the ballroom where they were playing the games, and every time we would get close to the end, he was rushing down. On the first day, he was rushing down, and he was going to. But he was
funny.
I can't watch them. I can't watch them with everyone. I need. He's I got to go back to the room. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And he sat down with me, I think, for the Mouse game. I think it was the Mouse game.
Oh,
and we were there for the first 4 rounds. It was the first 4 or 5 rounds, and he's like, I can't do this. I'm going to say things I can't say. And he's just back up. I mean, that's the kind of guy that he is. It's funny.
He was like, I'm going to fire you. So Complexity, the one win that you were mentioning, it is unfortunate, but talk me about where your head is at with them getting the 2-0 and then eventually, unfortunately, at the very, not getting that last win.
I think the thing is, you have to remember, Complexity were never supposed to be in the elimination stage to begin with. They went 3-1 under the old rules. Again, remember, rules, we love these. Under the old rules, going 3-1 means that you were not going and winning that bye to go into the elimination stage. The only reason that they got it was because they played in other events that Furia didn't, won more points than Valve ranking, got the highest seed in the Valve ranking, and therefore, when they did the pre-seeding for the major, they got that extra spot. So automatically, they get a boost. And I think they would have gotten through anyways. I think it would have been a bit more challenging, but I think they would have gotten through. They won. They had to play Pain, and then they won another. Arguably, it was easy. It was an easy 2-0 to get to. But the 3 teams that they played were hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's going to knock them for, on individually losing those 3 games. If they were, in a vacuum, it would have been great, right? It would have been great to see if they were losing in a vacuum. Oh, we lost to Mouse? Yeah, that sucks. I mean, happens. Mouse is a top 5 team. Oh, we lost to Vitality? Pff, yeah, dude.
Previous major winners.
Oh my God, we lost to FaZe? Yeah, man. I mean, they've been tops. You're right.
Yeah.
What do we... Yeah. But for all 3 to happen in a row, obviously makes fans upset.
Yeah.
I know Moses was pretty pissed about it, and I don't super agree with his level of this is an abhorrent collapse.
Yeah.
It is a collapse. It does suck. They still guaranteed themselves top 12 in a major. They still proved that they can hang with the big boys. They took Vitality to the brink. I mean, they got close.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that they overachieve in a lot of different areas. I just think that this team, we have to be comfortable with the fact that Complexity will be a top 15 team.
Okay. Do you think do you see that as good enough? Do you think Jason Lake sees that as because I think what's really interesting...
So what do you want, I think, is the answer here.
Because what I find really interesting is in Counter-Strike, everyone wants a top 10 team. You can't have 100 top 10 teams.
Yes.
And what I'd be looking for in an organization is to go, I know this is not a Complexity, but we want a top 100 team. We want a top 50 team. We want a top 75 team. Do you think it is a completely okay thing and people overreact? They're like, everyone must be the best team in the world.
Yes.
Do you think it's just like completely fine being like, we're top 15 players, we're going to make runs like that at the major, every now and again, an IM Sydney's going to pop up, every now and again the stars will align? Do you think that's just like a completely normal thing? And people go a little bit too much of like every team, like our team has to win every single tournament?
The expectation for complexity, genuinely, should be that every ESL challenger that they go into, they should be in a final or win.
Yeah.
That is a reasonable thing for this team. They're going to go play international lands. They're
a tier 1.5 team. Almost,
right, exactly. Okay. You know what? You know why I'm comfortable with it is because they're American. Because that's their whole ethos. They're like, we don't want to be a top 5 team if it means that we're sacrificing the identity of what we're building. The identity of what we're building is that we're making sure that this is an American team. Okay, who else are you getting that's going to be American that's going to like build this team up? They got a leash. They literally got the best American player that you want. Okay, they can go find a Canadian. Okay, but they want specifically, as I've been told, American.
Yeah.
Okay, they've got the best American players. They literally have the best American. What do you want more? You want the team to be better? Sure. You want the moving parts to be better? Sure. Like you can go have friggin' Hallzerk could be upgraded at some point or anything. But like, you know, this is a top 15 team that is continuously being solid.
Yeah.
And I think that the overall expectation that this team needs to somehow continuously overachieve is unrealistic for the budget that Complexity has, for their continuous history that they have.
Yeah.
And like it's all a math problem at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Sponsorship dollars have to come in. They can pay what they can and they're gonna have outputs and inputs. I don't think that Complexity is in a place to go ahead to look at friggin' Twist and go, hey man, you should totally come down for floppy. Like that's just not a thing.
That's not realistic.
So it's okay. It genuinely is okay to accept the team. You always are going to want them to be better, and I'm always going to want Complexity to be a number 1 team in the world. But it's being okay with the set expectations of like, yeah, they should win the challengers, and at majors, hell yeah, them getting into top 16, awesome. Them almost making quarterfinals, awesome.
Yeah.
But like a team like Liquid, who has Twist, who has Nath, who has Katie, who has like Yekinde, who has Skulls, like really coming up there.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah, you expect way more out of them because of the caliber of the players that they have.
Evidently bigger budget, seeing who they'll be able to get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have different expectations for budgets and players than they are. And as long as those organizations are staying within the ethos of what they're trying to do, that is what's important. And I think that you can support them for wanting to be the best for that.
Okay.
So, yeah, again, obviously I'm always going to want North America to have the best teams in the world, but sometimes it's just saying that's not possible right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's about building up for the future where it is possible.
Yeah.
And like maintaining these top 15 teams and building them up with the players that come up from the next generation.
We're going to have 7 Americas teams in the fucking major in Shanghai. That's awesome, dude.
Surely they're not all Brazilian next time.
I mean,
surely.
No, but like even if they are, awesome, dude.
More spots. Brazil,
if Brazil continues to grow up, they're going to get spots. Our region is going to get points. We're going to continue to have more interactions together. Great. I'm always going to want America to do well because that is who I'm paid to cover and support. But like, you have to be realistic about, you know, what is achievable, what is tangible, and how can we set our expectations for that. It's unrealistic to set up massive high expectations. You have to set achievable goals.
Yeah. Okay, and well, drawing back on a comment, so I guess shifting out of like direct Counter-Strike itself, and drawing on a conversation we had previously about covering stuff when you're a North American only site, and you've got all these other British sites, sorry, English-speaking sites, you've got HLTV, and then you've got like Dust2, all the other Dust2s who do their specific regions, so it's like, how do I cover them but in English? What is it like when you're at an event like this and when you're at the biggest events? How is it like when you're maybe overshadowed a little bit by the HLTVs and you're competing with all those British sites and you're confined to just North America? How is it covering those and making, I guess, turning a consistent viewer base?
Well, it's a hell of a lot easier, I'll tell you that. When I'm in the opening stage and the elimination stage, and all I have to worry about is, you know, my boys, right? Like, all I've got to worry about in the opening stage is the Brazilian teams.
It's a lot easier.
And the only concern is I'll go to Hook and Marks with Dusty Brazil, and I'm like, all right, buddy, who speaks English on the Brazilian teams, right? Like, I got to do an interview. But I mean, you know, I get to focus on that core, and I get to really hone in on, like, okay, I know what I need to do. It's all going to be about this. Let's go. The hard part is now when we have a week of like, there's no American teams.
Yeah.
American audiences, what are they actually tuning in for? And what they're tuning in for is the international teams. Who covers the international teams? A lot of the other sites, especially like HLTV, right? So I know that I'm not going to necessarily always get the best coverage. And in all honesty, going to some of these events is hard on our metrics. It is hard. But what we're doing is we're building a site, we're building a community, we're building a culture of expectation that North America is going to have someone there following your teams, covering your teams. And hey, they might be out, but we're still going to find an angle or do something else. So when it comes to times like this, I have to figure out what can I do differently to everyone else. And I think that's something that, talking about very, very honestly, the episode that happened last night when there was the stage storming where individuals were coming out and they were, going on stage for a specific reason, right? We had to figure out quickly, we were the first site to push out an article.
Yeah, literally, they were on the stage, and I checked my phone, and I'm like, holy shit, he's already got an article out.
So the reason that we had that was because we found out ahead of time that this was potentially happening. And I was sick, and Jeff was looking at me to go, and I was like, I'm going to bed, you got all of this. And he was like, oh, I think this might be happening. I'm like, just start the article.
Yeah.
Just start it, because like, if we have to kill it, because nothing happens, nothing happens. But we had already started writing something and getting a framework together when it happened. So we immediately said, okay, done, go.
More will continue.
More will continue.
We'll follow you. We'll follow what happens.
We followed up with tweets of videos that were there, and it was something that we did where we were ahead of the curve. And we provided information to people, and we were the source that no one else was doing in that first immediate time, right? The other things that we did were, we followed the CSGO Empire Cup that was being held next week. We were also one of the first ones to be like, hey, these teams are dropping out, and we're writing articles about the teams that are dropping out.
And casters.
And casters and everything else. That's the time that we, as a website, need to be, what can we do that no one else is doing? And it can't just be the same old thing of, here's this video, here's this other thing. It's, what's the ramifications that are happening around it? What are the underlying stories, right?
A little bit more deeper.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't even need to be deeper, but it's like, what's on the periphery? What's on the periphery that might be getting talked about on Twitter, but isn't getting put into an article for people to see, right? No one can see everything that's happening on Twitter. We all like to pretend that we live lives on Twitter and we can see all of the news. And then when you write something and put something out, everyone, oh, well, we already knew this. No, that's not how news works. You're supposed to write things that is that everyone does know. That's the point of the news. And you print the record and you put it out there.
It's hard to sometimes visualize when there's so much going on Twitter to what's actually what actually is happening.
Right. And so that's for those kinds of things, that's something that we try to do is figure out what's going on that we should be covering or we should be talking about, especially at these events. And I think other things is that I'm trying to find Americans that are in the audience and be like, why did you come here? Why did you come to Copenhagen? You know that we suck. What's going on?
What was your thought process in that?
Right, the guy that one of the guys that I saw this morning, the Bad News Bears and the Party Astronauts merch. He saw me, clocked the shit out of me, stood up and goes, "Hi, Ryan," and comes over. But that's the community that we're trying to build.
Yeah.
Is I want people to be able to recognize me and then come to talk to me about why they're there.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, I booked this."
More personal.
Right, exactly. He's like, "I booked this in October. I wanted to come from Chicago, and I'm making another extra week-long trip out of it." And it's oh, okay, that's cool. That's something different. Who are you going to be rooting for here? Oh, I'm going to be rooting for FaZe because they used to have twists, and that's going to be a fun thing. But it's these are interesting stories that I can try to tell. And is it going to be the most popular? No. Is it going to be something that I think we can do that still connects North America to what's happening right now? Sure. And so that's where it's at these events, it's hard to always do. And I think we're constantly evolving how we want to do our coverage. I think we're stepping away from covering a lot of the international events into covering our local events. We did more frag coverage. We did a frag coverage as we were doing major coverage. Yeah. That was the worst. It was awful. It was so bad. I never want to do that again.
Was it just too much going on?
It was so bad. Jeff is he's pumping up video interview after video interview after video interview. And there's no Wi-Fi in the frag plate. He doesn't have a table. He's sitting in a bathroom trying to transcribe. I'm trying to cover day one of a major, which, as you know, is the best of ones in 2 rounds, back to back to back to back.
A lot of
and
chaos.
they stagger the Brazilian teams every hour on the hour. So I'm writing the recaps and previews and interviews. And it was miserable. But that's what we have to do. That's what you have to do. So,
and it kind of worked.
It worked. It was weird, but we saw a lot of success.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of success actually from that. We had some. This month has been our. By tomorrow will be our best month in history for Dust 2 US. Which is awesome. It's exceptional. We're constantly breaking records of where we've been.
Well, there's been a lot on this month.
There's been a lot on this month because it also includes the RMR.
Yeah.
But again, HLTV was there, but we still found ways to get around the competition and do things that were going to be different. And I think that was where we excel is doing that. And that's how we are different. And that's where we're figuring out these new pathways for us to move forward. And that's how it's working out better for us.
Okay, that's really interesting. And we'll bring us to a close because we have been here for, I kind of expected it to be kind of this length, but definitely a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take too much of your time. There's an interesting thing that's been happening. Rush B Media, it's coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to exactly say who's involved.
That's public. It's public.
Is it public? So, Liam and Adam are, from my knowledge, the two. I don't know if they're the only 2 people, but they're the main 2 people.
Yeah.
What are your? And I think I know that you're kind of involved a little bit.
Very, very barely.
How does all this make you feel? Because Rush B is obviously your child. That is your baby.
So I'm really lending the brand name to them. I still think that they're using some assets that we used from the
Which
website
would make
previously.
sense, yeah.
And I have still been paying hosting fees for the entire time that it's been dormant.
I was going to say, because it's always been a thing. You could always go back there and find stuff.
Yeah, which is good and something that I always want to kind of keep up. Which is a discussion of budget between my wife and I, because she keeps asking why
are we going on a date in 2 months? It's Rush B Media.
We had hosting fees at the time when it was big, and then we never adjusted them when the site went dormant. So we were still paying hosting fees for when the site was big. So she was asking, why are these significant charges still on the card? And But I'm excited about it. I think it's great. I think they approached me about it a couple months ago, and they were like, we want to just do it again. It's something that no other site is really. There was a hole left, obviously, when I shuttered it.
What's that hole?
There's no site that's out there that gives an avenue for people to be creative in a way that Rush B Media allowed people to be creative. One of the guys is now a big YouTuber when he first joined. We have people working full-time in social media from when it was first founded. People have become writers with full-time opportunities elsewhere. People joined HLTV. People joined other sites. Other people just got their feet wet. And then, David was part of Rush B Media, and now he heads up UK CSGO. There's a lot of good that the site did in, I think, giving people not only just the opportunity to show off their work, but it provided confidence, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that's what the best part was, is that people looked at it, said, someone believes in me enough to allow me to do this, and I can go figure it out. I'm not, we all figured it out. We all were figuring it out as we went.
It's kind of esports a little bit.
And obviously, there's things that we learn and improve from constantly every single day, and that's kind of what Rush B Media is hopefully going to be now. Is it's going to be the restart of it is going to be in a much better place from when it was when I first started it.
Because it has more of a footing to stand on now, even though it's
not even that. The people that are running it are much more intelligent than I was when I started.
I guess because it was your first time when you did start it, so for you yourself were I don't know what I'm doing really, but I'm here.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think it's great that they're doing the open applications, and people have the opportunity to be okay, I'm not going to get the world-class journalism education here, but I can get the confidence to be hey, I have this really cool idea about this player that's a niche thing, and I can put it on a site that people pay attention to, and I can get critiqued for the first time by the public, which is scary.
And can put you off instantly.
Right, but you'll have the backing of people that are going to help you and support you and say, listen, sucks that these people didn't like it, but we still believe in what you have to say.
And also, their thoughts matter a lot more than just random Bob and Joe who think that this guy isn't good at this player isn't good.
100%. So those guys are running it up, and they're very excited about this. I think it should be starting soon. I'm basically the involvement that I have is
the big daddy.
No, the involvement that I have is basically like, hey, if you have a problem and don't know what you're doing, like, please come talk to me.
Older brother.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be involved in day-to-day. I'm going to have no edit, so I'm not going to edit articles. I'm not going to be involved in articles. I am not doing anything in any matter. It's purely of like, hey, there's this really weird situation that we have about this thing. What do we do? And it'll be like, hey, I might not know the answer, but like, let's figure it out together.
Let's talk it over.
Yeah.
With an extra mind who has that, who's had that experience, who's been there a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm excited for them. I'm excited for people that are going to be joining because I know that it can be a really cool experience. Yeah. And so that's what I'm really hopeful for in this like V2 launch is that like people just, they get inspired again to write cool shit like we used to do and keep that going. So.
Yeah. All right, well, that sounds really awesome. And, well, honestly, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's been a really awesome conversation. Thank you so much for bringing the energy on every single question.
Yeah.
And, like, properly, you know, this is why I sometimes enjoy interviewing people who aren't players because, you know, you get a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit more unique and it's a little bit more like, fuck it, let's actually have a conversation instead of just being like, well, I don't know, we played well today, I guess. But like, thank you so much for sitting down and joining me.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome seeing you guys doing a little bit more with Dust 2 in like the coverage of events. I think that is going to make people reevaluate how they do their content, and it's gonna, if one person changes and takes that leap of faith, then a lot of people will start following and spawning their own ideas off that. And I think it's really it's beneficial.
And then I got to come up with new ways to get ahead of them. You know?
It's like playing Team Counter-Strike. You do something new, and then someone steals it, and you're like, fuck, I need to get something new.
Yeah.
But we will be pushing each other forward, and I think that is really healthy for the scene, and it will benefit everyone in the long run.
100%.
But with that, thank you so much, and thank you everyone who has listened or may have not listened all this far. It's been another interview here in Copenhagen, and we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, be getting some more. Who really knows, but we'll have to find out. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time. Cheerio.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. That was such
I know